I don't like Jane and Bingley together. He is spineless.
This is funny.
It's so funny you look in pain. You're like, ha.
I am. I'm kind of like, okay, I'm trying to see this. Okay, I do like Jane and Bingley together. I think they're super sweet. I think they both are so pure of heart and just see the world in a very similar way. And I think they're going to be really great parents. But I have to say, I understand parts of this argument because I personally found it really unattractive that Mr. Bingley was so easily persuaded that Jane didn't love him and that he doesn't know his own mind and has to, get Darcy's blessing and Darcy's opinion on everything. I know that would personally really bother me. And I've actually thought before when Mr. Bennet says to Jane, you and Mr. Bingley are so kind that all of your servants are going to cheat you. I do think they're very similar. And sometimes you need a little bit of an opposite attract dynamic. But I do think Jane is a lot more grounded than we give her credit for. So, end of the day, I like them together. I think it works.
Oh my god, I just have like so many thoughts on this. That's so weird. I didn't even think that I would, but I actually do. Okay, I have some thoughts on the, that he was like persuaded by Darcy. I think maybe I see it less that he was like persuaded by Darcy in the sense that he realized that Jane had these massive feelings, but he was still persuaded out of it. Does that make sense? He was like, oh wow, Jane, she does have really strong feelings. Then someone says something different and he's like, oh, maybe I'm just like so wrong, and that's not actually the case. I don't think Jane like showcases her feelings that well. Like, she is quite subtle about the way that she's interacting with him. She's not putting all of her cards on the table kind of thing, which is understandable, but at the same time that gives him less to go off. In if you don't give somebody anything, are they going to put themselves on the line for you? Do you know what I mean? Especially if they like you, like, are they going to do that? Because that's, you're really risking your own heart in that situation. So sometimes I'm a little bit like, maybe it wasn't like Mr. Darcy had to go to great lengths to persuade him. Maybe it was actually quite easy to just be like, maybe she's not really interested in you. And he was just like, oh, I've kind of worried that as well, because, I'm not sure she's not giving me that much attention or something like that. Do you know what I'm saying? So part of me is like, maybe it wasn't quite as extreme. And I have other thoughts as well. What are my other thoughts on this? I had loads of other thoughts and now I'm like forgetting what I was going to say. Oh, and a reason that I think this as well, I think there's two instances. The first being, there's parts of the book when Bingley like openly kind of mocks Darcy or just like makes fun of him because he knows what Darcy's character is, right? Bingley's not that much of a pushover if you really read into the text. Like, he knows what Darcy's like, and he'll even be like, Darcy will do something, he'll be like, I don't really care what Darcy's up to, like, Darcy will be Darcy, like, I'm just gonna do my own thing. And there's so many instances that he shows that, which is why I'm always a bit like, I think the issue with the Darcy situation is that he conceals the fact that Jane was in London, because Mr. Bingley, like, if Mr. Bingley knew that, Mr. Bingley would probably be like, she did like me, it's cool, like, I'm gonna go and see her. But because he conceals it, it actually just takes it completely out of his hands, and I don't think that's why I can't see him as spineless, because I'm like, he would step up if he's given the green flag by Jane, you know what I mean? He would step up, and we see that at the end. And also it says that, like, when Elizabeth's asking Darcy about the situation, like his interference with Jane, Darcy says, like, when I told Bingley that I concealed the fact that Jane was in London, like, he was miffed. He was not happy with me. Like, he was pretty angry about it. Like, he forgave me, but he was like he was not happy. So I don't see Bingley as spineless. I see him as actually having a spine. Do I think he's got softer characteristics compared to Darcy? Yes, absolutely. And not all women are going to be interested in somebody like Darcy, And so I think, yeah, I don't think he's spineless. I think he has a spine, but I think he's, not knocking people out with his spine like Darcy is.
Knocking people out. You bring up a lot of really good points here. That's absolutely right. And I noticed that in the book, there is one particular scene, and I think even more than that, where Bingley does poke fun at Darcy, and Darcy gets kind of annoyed, and none of that is really portrayed in the 1995 or 2005 adaptations. So I think Bingley does have a little bit more fire than is portrayed in those adaptations. So I think that that's a really good point. And one other thing I wanted to say is, I know a lot of people may not like this, but I super disliked the portrayal of Bingley in the 2005 version because, okay, he is very sweet and endearing in certain ways, but he's portrayed as stumbling over his words and really socially awkward. And I actually think in the book, one of Bingley's greatest strengths is his ability to socially connect with people. And I think because Jane has more reserve, I think they're really compatible because both of them are so good natured and value seeing the good in people. And so that'll make them both very comfortable and happy in each other's presence and in public. And I can see them coming back from a ball and talking about how great everyone was. But I think that Bingley's more extroverted and more has an easier ability to connect with strangers. And I think that he'll help bring Jane out of her shell. So, yeah.
Yes, I love that. That is so true. I think in the past we've actually compared slightly Darcy and Jane's like approach to society and how they're kind of put on these pedestals and how that in itself can be like the halo effect, right? It can kind of make you reject people around you if people are constantly putting you on a pedestal. I think I heard this thing that it was like if you treat somebody like a celebrity, they're always going to treat you like a fan. So I was like, that's really interesting. But yes, I love all of that. So true. I actually have such a fondness for Bingley now, even just in this conversation. Like, I'm just like, oh, and also I think people see like, oh, he's a pushover, like, but Darcy told him what to do and he needs Darcy's approval and everything. I think it's less that like Darcy's like this domineering presence in Bingley's life and more that Bingley and Darcy have such a respect, they have such a strong friendship. The fact that they can make fun of each other and like poke fun, and the fact that Bingley knows him so well that he can make those jokes, and the fact that Darcy spends so much time with the Bingleys, like considering really they aren't on the same playing field. But Darcy chooses to be Bingley's friend. He wants to spend time with him and live in his house and live in conditions that are lesser than he would be in Pemberley. I think they have such a strong friendship that I'm just like, I think it would be more that if you have like a really strong male friendship and your friend's like, I'm not sure about like this person you're seeing, I think that would make you question slightly. You'd probably just be like, yeah, maybe there is like things to consider. Maybe I should take a step back for a little bit and see what happens. Again, I think if Bingley had known that Jane was in London, he would have just been like, great, I'm going to pursue this even more. And I think Darcy knew that, and I think that's why he kept it from him, because he was like, me saying to him that I don't think Jane's a great match is not going to be like, that's not gonna sway the tide for Bingley. Like, he'll still pursue her if he wants to. That's why he conceals it, I think, because he's literally just like, I'm just gonna have to tell, like, not say that she's here, because if I do, he'll go and pursue her. So,
oh my gosh. Okay, two things based on what you said. One is, if they make another Pride and Prejudice adaptation, I hope that they show a little bit more of Darcy and Bingley's banter with each other and how Bingley pokes Darcy, because I think both of the most recent popular adaptations have shown Bingley and Darcy a little bit too much as foils of one another. And I think actually there's more nuance there. And so I think that would be really good. And then I also just wanted to put out there that my sister thinks that Bingley is much more of a catch and the better man in the situation. So there are people, since you love Bingley, there are people out there who definitely prefer Mr. Bingley to Mr. Darcy. So that's another.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh, that in itself is like such a fun topic. And the more that you talk about like the reasons that you don't really like the portrayal of Bingley in the 2005 one, the more that I can kind of see that as well. I agree. I feel like they don't portray all of his kind of more nuanced characteristics in that very well. I think in the 1995 they do a slight job of it. Like at the end, you know, when Bingley and Darcy are like walking out together and Bingley's just about to go and propose to Jane, and he's like, "You concealed this from me all this time," and Darcy's like, "Yes, I'm a terrible friend. I'm so sorry, Bingley. Like, I hope you can forgive me." And he's like, "Oh, so I have your blessing then." And he's literally just like, "Yeah, sure, you do you, friend." You go propose, because, you know, I'd already proposed to her sister once and she refused me, so you shoot your shot.
That is a really good scene. But when you say that, I'm like, but he's still, after like being mad at Darcy, he's like, "So I have your blessing." And then Darcy's like, "Do you need it?" And he's like, "No."
Yeah, that is true.
But I'd like to have it all the same. That's a really good part.
Yeah, I just love their friendship. I'm sorry. And I'm just like loving Bingley even more right now, so. Do I think he's spineless? No. I think he's got a spine. I think he's just not as, it's not as overt as it is with Darcy.
I think I'll go with, I think spineless is too strong of a word, but I think because he's good natured and likes to please people, he can be a little bit, I think he can be led. I think his opinion can be swayed, but maybe not on the most important things. End of the day, he still married Jane.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I feel like because they're set against each other, not set against each other, but like because they're kind of set side by side, Darcy and Bingley. Darcy doesn't even tell anybody what his plans are. You know, he will just do something straight off his own back. I think this is like something that we've touched on in the Harry Potter episodes as well. You know, Darcy's such a strong character in that sense. Like, he doesn't have to go to somebody for validation for him to make decisions. You know, he doesn't go and speak to somebody about proposing to Lizzie. He's like, "I've thought about this in my own head, and this is the conclusion I've come to." Whereas Bingley is more of a people person. Like, he wants to have other people's validations. He wants to like talk things through with people. And like, some people are just like that, you know what I mean? It's just different qualities, right? Some people are happy with their own thought processes. They can make decisions on their own and not need other people's thoughts, validation, what have you. And some people prefer to hear other people's thoughts. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. You know, I actually think that there's something to be said for interdependence over independence. And I feel like sometimes actually Darcy's too independent, that's his downfall. Like, he doesn't actually include people in his thoughts and conversations. You know, look how drastic that turns out, like the Wickham situation and stuff. And also you can blame him slightly for the fact that Lady Catherine's so upset. Does Darcy speak up and be like, "I'm not going to be marrying your daughter"? No, he just like keeps everything in his own mind. "I'm already proposing to somebody else." Like, he's just not forthcoming with people sometimes, and that in itself, I think, can be a little bit of an issue.
You're on fire. This honestly makes me think I've been too hard on Bingley, because yeah, there's nothing wrong with wanting some validation. Like, it's good to know your own mind. There's nothing wrong with sharing things with your friends and wanting a little validation and reassurance from your friends. And I guess maybe it's healthy modeling that men can do that too. Like, I feel like it's more accepted for women to do that, to seek validation and reassurance from one another. But maybe it was actually healthy that Mr. Bingley wanted to be open with his friend and get validation. And I do agree with you that Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth are so private, to the point where it's like, okay, you could have told Jane a little earlier, or you could have told your friend, or been a little bit more open, Darcy. So
yeah, I think that causes them both to be more judgmental as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Jane and Bingley, because they consider like what other people, they're just a little bit more empathetic. I'm starting to like get the vibe that Elizabeth and Darcy have such narcissistic qualities. But you know, like, I feel like the way that Jane and Bingley approach stuff is like they're not isolating themselves from other people. What are your thoughts? Is it going to sway my final opinion? Maybe not, but I want to hear it anyway, and I don't think that's bad thing to do.
Yeah, like, even if you think about it, Lizzie is described as a little bit more socially intelligent and shrewd and able to size up a room, but at the end of the day, Jane is the one who calls it correctly, that everyone shouldn't have vilified him and judged him so soon, and that they were wrong about Darcy and wrong about believing Wickham so quickly. So
yes. And also, like, she's so right about Bingley as well. Like, I know that obviously she accepts that he like disappears, and she's like, oh, this is so terrible, he probably wasn't interested in me. Valid thought process, you know, if somebody just like disappears on you. But she also is there like, I can't understand Darcy being this really terrible person because I know Mr. Bingley so well. I don't think he'd have such a friend. That takes some level of like social maturity, right? You've got to really unpack stuff there to be like, I know this guy well enough to suggest that he wouldn't have such a terrible friend. And also, like attracts like. Mr. Bingley's a great guy. Nobody's disputing that. Why would such a great guy attract such a terrible friend? They wouldn't.
I feel like I'm viewing this whole novel in such a new way. Man, Jane.
I don't know where this is coming from. I'm channeling something here.
Right? Also, just fun fact, since you brought up the 1995 version of Mr. Bingley, I love his portrayal. I think he's good-natured. I think he's sweet. I just think he's wonderful. And his name's Crispin Bonham Carter, and he's actually he's related to Helena Bonham Carter. I just thought that fun.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. I never know actors' names, so I love that. That's an awesome fact. That's ace.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, he's related to Bellatrix Lestrange. I know she plays so many other roles, but yeah.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. So are we disagreeing with this person? Because really I feel like we've argued that Bingley has a spine. It's, just not an obvious spine. It's just like he's got a chilled out spine. He's got a malleable spine.
Girl, so much talk of the spine. Yeah, I think this is too harsh. I think I understand the frustration that he, went to London. It took him a while to come back to Jane. I get that. But I think we've decided at the end of the day, he's not spineless. That's not fair to say.
Oh my God. I'm so excited to do a Bingley character study at some point. That would be so good. Oh my God.
Me too.
That's got me excited for this. I'm so excited for that.